Hey crew, I've got the keys to this 25 Audi RS3 and my 26 BMW M2 CS. Before we get any further, just look at these keys with me for a sec, because they look very similar in materials. They've got this metal-looking silver trim, the same black plastic, and then, oh, look at that, on the back, this key actually has some distinction for this being an RS product versus my key looking like basically every other BMW except for the M tricolor on the side. I'm just a little disappointed because this car costs $111,000 and this one is a reasonable 78 grand. And I know you're already upset. I'm comparing something that is $33,000 cheaper than this, but let me point something out. For 26, a competitor to the RS3 would have been the Lexus IS500, but that has been discontinued. A competitor to the M2 CS would have been the 718 Cayman GTS 4.0, also discontinued for 26. So, as a backup plan, you might actually be cross-shopping these vehicles. And further, you might say, well, just a standard M2 would do. And certainly, price-wise, it's a lot closer. But I don't own a regular M2. So these are the vehicles we're talking about today. Thanks so much. Let's talk about the exteriors now. The RS3 is a 4-door subcompact sedan. The M2 CS is a 2-door compact coupe. So this vehicle is 2 inches shorter, it's an 1.5 inches narrower, and 1/2 inch taller than the M2 CS. And those dimensions, along with the silhouette, help the M2 CS stand out a little more on the road. There's just a bit of extra wow factor for something that's longer, it's lower, it's wider, and it's got a long hood and a gentle taper to that roofline versus a stubbier 4-door sedan. I love sedans. I had my CT5e Blackwing. I thought that car looked amazing, but just, objectively, that's the way it is. Let's get into the styling specifics now. The front of the RS3, it's a lot of face, right? You've got all of that meshing of the grille, and with the gloss black treatment of the surround, it just looks a bit uniform, along with the meshing for the side vents. The anthracite color to the 4 Audi rings does kind of break that up a bit, and then with this car's carbon package and the Dynamic Plus pack, you get some carbon fiber accents for the corner vent there, and along the side sills, the door mirror caps, the deck lid spoiler, and the diffuser surround. As for the lighting, Audi always does this well. You get projector LED headlights for 25. There are also some cool light sequences for the LED DRLs, and you've got sequential turn signals. Paint job. This feels a little unfair in the M2 CS's favor because this Kimura gray metallic, one, it's not the best color for the RS3, and two, it's only $600 versus the velvet blue metallic of the M2 CS at its $3,000 price tag. But I still have to say it, this is going to catch your eye way more than this paint job. Popping over to the M2, I want to point this out because you can't really see it until I'm directly to the side. The face is straight up and down, whereas the RS3 has a defined curve right into that hood. And I really like how much more broken up the front end of the M2 CS is than the more uniform RS3. You've got some gloss black, but you've got a lot of body color there, and you don't have really any meshing to the grille at all. Now this is a problem because bugs and rocks go straight into that intercooler, but it looks pretty cool. You also get projector LED headlights and LED turn signals and DRLs. Unlike the RS3, you don't get any carbon fiber details up front, but you do get carbon fiber door mirror caps. You add a carbon fiber hood, and the trunk lid with this cool ducktailing design is made from carbon fiber. You just can't see it. And then down low, you also get a carbon fiber diffuser. The silhouette of this car is just fantastic to me. I love that long, bulging hood, how it sits tightly on the tires, and of course, the carbon fiber ducktail at the back end. Wheels. We've got forged alloys, 19-inch front, 20-inch rear on the M2 CS, and they are in bronze because it just stands out even more. The RS3 gets 19-inch front and rear forged alloys, and those are wrapped in Bridgestone Potenza Sport tire, so good summer tire. They're reverse staggered though, 265 front, 245 at the back end. The purpose of that is so you can get the back end to rotate around a little easier. And this car has optional carbon ceramic brakes up front, but steels at the back. The M2 CS has optional carbon ceramics front and rear. Also, the tires for this car are a more aggressive compound, Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2s, and they are traditional for a rear drive car, staggered, narrower up front, 265, and wider in the back, 285. Styling is of course subjective, but this is a category where I think the M2 CS wins hands down relative to the RS3. Just the aesthetics of a two-door coupe are much prettier than a four-door subcompact sedan, even if I think the back end of the M2 CS with the taillight shape and this area over here doesn't really look that great. Over at the RS3, the back end is cohesive with the rest of the car's design, but unlike the front, it's not as uniform. It's broken up nicely with the carbon fiber and the Audi rings and the body color here, the RS3 badge, the LED taillights, and the pronounced diffuser with the carbon fiber surround and the two large oval exhausts that actually house individual pipes within those. And I do like that for 25 they added this kind of racing style center reflector light. Now it's your turn. Let me know in the comments which car looks better as I head to the interior. To get into the back of the RS3, you do have doors with smart keyless entry on those and the front, and inside are black leather seating surfaces with a bit of a sport bucket design there and higher side bolsters with red contrast stitching and a red honeycomb pattern on the seats, along with red accents on the outside of the seat belts with the RS design group here. Hard plastics up top. You do get some ambient lighting and a suede insert with some injection molding and red stitching there. There's a Sonos sound system as standard. Getting in, I don't have to duck now a little bit. Have to duck my head just a bit to get inside. Behind my own seat at 6 feet tall, I have a decent bit of knee room here, but then my head is pressed uncomfortably up against that roof. So I can't make it back to that headrest. If I wanted to give myself more headroom, I would need to scooch forward, but then it's still not ideal, and now my knees are pressed uncomfortably into the back of the seat. So the RS3's back seats are not ideal for 6-footers behind other 6-footers. You do get air vents in the center and 2 USB-C ports, along with a basic form of climate control, if I wanted to try it, to get into the middle seat. Oh no, this is just don't do it if you're big. And if you don't have a middle passenger, then you get an armrest that comes down with leather padding and 2 cup holders. So it's workable even for larger people, for a work lunch, but not for a long drive with large passengers. Let's check out the front next. Door close noise. It's got a good solid thud to it. Up front, we step up to some more aggressively bolstered sport bucket seats with RS imprinted in the back, some red suede up by the shoulders with that RS package, multi-ways of adjustment, 4-way lumbar, and seat heating, but not seat ventilation. On the front doors, the upper trim is injection molded at least. You've got some ambient light accents here with the perforations of that suede, more injection molding and stitching, harder plastics down low, and that Sonos speaker cover. Pull open the trunk lid to find 8 cubic feet of space. Now, it's not a lot, but this isn't a big vehicle. You can fit my longboard in the back, just like you can in the M2 CS, which does have a bigger trunk. In both vehicles, you can fold down the seats 40, 20, 40. Pulling down, closing up that trunk lid, and then sliding inside. As I do, I'll point out you've got 2 positions of memory here, power adjusting and power folding door mirrors. And now let me just turn on the vehicle to bring alive the digital gauge cluster. You also have a head-up display as an option with the RS, or maybe it's just called the tech package, and then a 10.1-inch infotainment screen. It's taking a sec to load here, and it's pretty responsive. This is not the latest and greatest from Audi. They've got a new infotainment software, but I actually prefer this because it retains some physical buttons down here for the climate and some drive settings down here, including the surround view camera system, which isn't the highest resolution, but actually having a camera at all is very beneficial when you want one, like I do in the M2 CS. There's also wireless charging pad, 2 USB-C ports. You can see that ambient lighting showing up here and around the cup holders. Lots of gloss black. This is just going to look terrible if it's not perfectly clean or brand new, to be honest. I also don't like the volume adjustment. It's like this slider, touch-sensitive controller. Just give me a volume knob, please, and seek buttons. Anyway, looking at the steering wheel, you've got a new wheel design for 25, sort of a, what do they call this, a squircle with the squared off top and bottom with Alcantara wrapping on it with the RS package, one of the packages. And I love the thickness of the wheel. It's not overly thick. I don't love the touch controls on the wheel. They never seem to work right, or I accidentally select one. I do appreciate the new RS custom button here and the ultimate performance checkered flag button off to the side. The digital gauge cluster is reconfigurable. Then around that, we've got more gloss black trim, but you also get this matte carbon fiber, which looks excellent around that Quattro badge, and red accents on the air vents. So it feels pretty spicy in here, and good technology, good features for $78,000. It needs seat ventilation, and it really could do with some more interior storage. The door pockets are pretty small, and then underneath my leatherette padded armrest, It's just not much at all in there. But let's compare this to the M2 CS next. Getting into the back of the CS is obviously much less convenient than having a separate door with a separate handle. I have to open this one door on this side, pull this lever, tilt the seat forward. It then does power glide out of the way, giving me a nice access point to step in and into the position behind my seats, letting it move back. We see that I do fit behind my seat thanks to the cutouts in the seats, but it's actually more comfortable to let my knees go out wide of the seat. But even slouched all the way forward, my head is still pressed uncomfortably against the roof. This is worse than the RS3, and that's the price you pay for the coupe silhouette. There also isn't an armrest, no cup holders, just this storage area, no USB ports, no third zone of climate, no air vents at all. So this is definitely not as desirable a place to be as the RS3. Let's check out the front next. Moving to the front, here is where the CS treatment does feel a bit unfair compared to the standard RS3, but even the regular M2 is available with these carbon bucket seats that look so much cooler, feel so much sportier, and they still have power adjustments. They have power adjusting side bolsters too, and seat heating like the RS3. On the doors, you get injection molding up top, this interesting pattern here, some more of that injection molding and padding there. Carbon fiber trim for the door inserts with illuminating CS badges. Those change color as you change the ambient lighting settings. Down low, harder plastics, and this is your trunk release button. And you'll see that, yes, you do have more space in the back, though really the additional room just comes from the trunk height, not necessarily depth or even the opening space itself. And you can pull on those levers to fold down the rear seats 40-20-40. The carbon fiber lid makes it very simple to close that up. And making my way inside, I have to be much more careful here than I did in the RS3 because of the fixed high side bolsters and this carbon fiber hump in the center there. Closing up that door, nice solid thud, even with the frameless windows. And let me turn on this car to get that full effect from the digital gauge cluster and infotainment, which share a curved glass housing that isn't as well integrated into the dashboard as the RS3, and it's also not as driver focused, having that segmented cockpit here and then an infotainment off to the side. This is more just universally accommodating for everyone. It is very visually compelling though, having the reconfigurations on the gauge cluster. You also have a head-up display here. It's larger, it's more feature-rich than the RS3, and the infotainment is sharper, and it's got better graphics, and it's quicker responding. It also has wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, like the RS3. You also get a wireless charging pad here, like the RS3. You get a physical volume knob, I like that. But a lot of the other functions are in the infotainment, not as redundancies down here, and that's a little more distracting while driving to have to hunt around in that screen. And then this whole carbon fiber console that is specific to the CS, and that's where it really distinguishes itself in terms of visual flair versus the standard M2 or even the RS3. You have some physical button redundancies, some gloss black, but not a ton of it, and I like the dial to control the infotainment if you don't want to touch the screen. Some drive settings here, this CS leather padding here, and you don't have an opening and closing console or a cup holder at all, and that is a big miss for this car relative to the RS3 as a daily driver. You do still retain one USB-C port there, one USB-A port there. Gloss carbon fiber is up on the dashboard, and the steering wheel also gets suede wrapping like the RS3 with just a flat bottom, not a flat top. Red center marker though, thickly padded wheel, not as right feeling in the hands as the RS3, but you do get a leather cover for the airbag, unlike the plastic cover for the RS3, and physical button inputs, not the touch controls. Custom buttons, M1 and M2, carbon fiber faced paddles, nice and large. This does feel very special, I've got to say that. With all the suede and the carbon fiber and the seats and the badging, it's a more memorable moment for the driver, at least. You just don't want to be in the back, unlike in the RS3, which is much more practical and obviously significantly less expensive. But now, let's see about the driving experience, starting with the CS. All right, let's fire it up. Vavoom goes the inline six. Hey cabin crew, thanks for joining for this comparison of my 26 M2 CS and the 25 Audi RS3. I'm gonna throw in my seatbelt here before we head on out, pulling the gear selector over and up into reverse, and releasing the parking brake. We've got a high-res backup camera, doesn't take over the whole screen. You can see we've got parking sensors, but again, no surround view camera. And that, I think, is a miss. It would really help for parking. I'm gonna back on out of here now. Trajectory line's going. And then over into drive. And we'll begin with a turning radius test. So let me pull the vehicle over here to the right. Line it up. And then crank the wheel to the left. And find a nice, tidy turning circle. I expect that for a smaller rear drive car like this. What does the horn sound like though? Someone is driving recklessly on the road and I've got to use it. What are they going to hear? Oh, that is a pronounced horn sound. As I exit this driveway now, you're hearing from the turn signal. Not necessarily common for BMW owners, but I'm using it. And considering how low the front end is, even though it has a rubberized front splitter, I don't want to scrape that, so I have to take things at quite the angle, slowly, carefully, to avoid interaction with that. Powertrain in the CS. It's a 3-liter twin turbocharged inline 6-cylinder making 523 horsepower and 479 pound-feet of torque that is routed through an 8-speed torque converter automatic to just the rear tire. That makes this the most powerful production rear drive BMW, and yet I'm not really concerned with that right now because I'm just daily driving with everything in the efficient and comfort settings. And here is where that torque converter auto is really handy for keeping things ultra smooth. Accelerating or decelerating, you do not really feel those gear changes. Now as I accelerate, even with the throttle response inefficient, because there's so much low-end torque, I can easily make my way up to speed and then just coast gracefully without the car feeling too edgy, too responsive for a daily driver duty. The cabin volume at speed is certainly higher than a regular M2 just because of the reduction in sound deadening, part of the weight savings measures for the CS. And on these Cup 2 tires, there's just a little more hum from those. It's not as pronounced on smooth tarmac like this, but when you get onto concrete slabs, it really does get quite loud. I found that out on a road trip I took not too long ago. There, or in a long highway commute setting, it can become annoying, but just driving around town, not as big of a deal. Ride quality is surprisingly good for a track-focused car like this. You do have the adaptive dampers that smoothen out the harsher impacts on the road, but it's still a firm setup with additional stiffening provided for the CS. So you are jostling about over the undulations in the road. You're just not feeling punished by the blemishes. Visibility out of the M2 is really quite good, and that's not always the case for a coupe. You actually don't have a crazy thick C-pillar back there, and when you benefit from blind spot monitoring in combination with the naked eye visibility out over the hood, through the side glass, and then out the rear view mirror, which does improve when you fold down both rear headrests. I just folded down one on that side. Then you really feel confident moving your way around traffic. Seat comfort is surprisingly good. Given the aggressive look of the chairs, you may not expect them to have as supple padding as they do, but for a length of time up to maybe 2 hours in the saddle, you're feeling pretty good. Beyond that, if you're like me and your back is somewhat wider, then the restrictive shape of the seats, yes, the bolsters do adjust, but that's down here, but the upper portion does become a little bit of a pain point. But once again, for daily drives, that's not really an issue. It's more just the inconvenience of getting in and out of them. Now, even in a daily driving context, you can have some fun behind the wheel of this car. I've set a mild performance grade for my M1 button, so I'll hit that once and twice, which is going to downshift, break up the cobwebs on that transmission, and perk up the throttle response to just dip the toes in the pool of power here for the M2 CS. And I do like it. Quickly shuffle your way past traffic. But if you want the full shebang, then you're gonna go to M2, or at least how I've set it up, which is the gloves off in manual mode now, pulling on the paddle, quickly downshifting, and pouring it on. Oh my. Well, that's something in the road. There's so much torque here. It feels a little squirrely with traction and stability turned off as I dig into the power. The back end is just dancing around in a straight line. That is wild. So much thrust. That transmission quickly shifts down and up. You'd swear it was a dual clutch with the haste of the shifts. Boom. The straight line velocity is something to behold. Love the sound of that inline six as well. It's more engine note than it is exhaust, and I do appreciate that, though I may have to do a mod later on for some sort of catback exhaust system to hear a little more from it, even with the valves open here. Now let's move from subjective to objective with a real-world 0 to 60 test. I've got my race box set up here to record all the calibrations for launch control. Foot is on the brake, pin the throttle, preparing, active, letting go. Little slip, and now we're moving. And there's 60 in 3.7 seconds. Rear drive can definitely be effective. Seriously. But you wouldn't choose this car just because of the straight line speed. More likely it's because when the road starts to curve, you know a smile is coming. And that's because of how they set up the CS to inhale curves like this. The additional stiffening of the chassis, the extra rear wheel camber, the engine and transmission mounts from the M4 CSL, and of course that extra dollop of power, and the M Sport differential. Oh, they work together wonderfully. What a lovely car. Then we add something the regular M2 is not praised for, and that is the steering feel. The way resistance builds, the lightning quick response, and the way it feels of the same energy as the platform just transforms the driving experience. Oh, and the brakes are good too, thankfully. Everything is in right proportion to make this a very true driver's car. I'm happy I own it. I really am. Oh, it's fun. And yes, the rear drive power delivery and resulting rotation do add to the experience. But I want to take a sec to go compare this to the Audi RS3 and its Quattro all-wheel drive. All right, let's fire on the RS3. Little delay before the 5-cylinder cranked on, but here we are. And now I'm going to throw my seatbelts and press the gear selector forward into reverse. This is just not as satisfying as a more traditional gear selector that you move with your hands, like in the M2. But now we're going to back on up. After the parking brake will go away if you press on the accelerator a little bit, as I did. And now pulling towards me into drive. Again, disappointing, but let's do the turning radius test now. Lining up before, cranking the wheel, and finding not as good of a turning circle as the M2 CS because it's a front drive biased all-wheel drive system, so the front tires have to power the vehicle and turn the wheel. Now, for the horn test though, what if someone is driving recklessly and I'm going to use my horn and they're going to hear, oh, it's so diminutive. Turn signal sound. As very pleasant though, I like that. And because the front overhang isn't as long as in the M2, I don't really have to worry about scraping. I don't have to have as much angle, and I can go forward at a greater pace with steeper driveways. Powertrain in the RS3 is a turbocharged 2.5-liter 5-cylinder. So we're down 1 cylinder, we're down 1 turbocharger, but we are arguably increased in excitement by having it be an odd cylinder count powertrain. And it does make 394 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. So heavily down on power relative to the M2 CS, down on power and torque. This car also has a 7-speed dual clutch automatic relative to the torque converter in the M2, and yet it behaves very similar to a torque converter in the smoothness. Typically with dual clutches, especially in that scenario, coming to a stop, you feel a clunkiness in the gear change from second to first, or when I accelerate again from first to second, but I don't really get that in the RS3. It's almost completely imperceptible. At the moment, I'm in the auto drive mode, and I'll compare this to comfort. Oh yeah, you really dig your foot into the throttle, and it slowly builds up in momentum and boost. Auto is just a bit perkier. Regardless of drive mode, the brake pedal response is sharp, but easy to modulate up to that stop. You don't have an auto hold function though, so my foot has to stay on the brake, which is such a chore at long lights like this. I'm kidding. Back in that auto mode, the 2.5-liter Turbo 5 will quickly and easily get you up to speed, even though it's now making 7 horsepower less than last model year. And I think that's just because of European emissions standards, something like that. But the power delta is not felt at all. And the custom RS mode is nice because I can pull up my presets like with the M buttons and have just a little more fun when scooting around town. Going back to auto here. The ride quality is as good, if not slightly better, than the M2 CS. Not only in the way that it moves over the undulations in the road, but also the way it absorbs the impacts with its set of adaptive dampers. It feels very much focused on daily driving, whereas the M2 CS feels like it's itching a little more for higher performance environments. And to that end, the RS3's cabin is also noticeably quieter than the M2 CS, not making as much tire hum, and you just don't hear as much of the outside road noise. The seats are also quite comfortable. They have a good shape to them where they hold me well in place, but they're not squeezing me in the upper portion of my back like in the M2 CS, and the padding is just a little more supple than in that car. They also have a thigh extender here to support the underside of my legs while not locking my legs in the position of straight on like you get in the M2. And then of course there is the benefit of not being worried about personal injury every time you get in and out of them. Visibility is predictably easy thanks to the downward slope of that hood. I see in front of the car better than the M2 CS. It's also a shorter hood, that helps. Out the side glass is simple. The pillars B and C are not that thick, although because you can't fold down the rear headrest, I actually think you can't see out the back quite as well as in the M2 CS. The long and the short of it is that the RS3 does feel like a more conducive daily driver. But is it just as fun when there's room to play? I'm gonna find out by going into the RS mode again and putting my foot all the way down. Wow. That's a heck of a lot of momentum. You can feel the difference in power between this and the M2, but this is not a slow car at all. And the difference in the way the power is served up, the front end feeling like it's tugging you along, whereas in the M2, it's the back end shoving you forward. This is still very fun, just totally different. And listen to that 5-cylinder. Such a unique note in a world of turbo 4-cylinders and even the BMW's inline 6. This is distinctive and acoustically savory. It even has a mode that lets you pretend for a second that it's rear-wheel drive. At least until the front tires hook again. but I'm getting ahead of myself. Other important information next. Like a real world 0 to 60 test. Once again, race box ready, conditions for launch control, engaged, it's active, letting go. Oh, jeez when that hooks. And there's 60 in 3.82 seconds. It's close, but not as quick as the more powerful, but rear-wheel drive M2 CS. That's good though. Now that we're on a twisty road, I want to jump back to why I was able to kick the back end around on that curve. That's because the RS3 has a trick rear differential. So what can happen in that kind of context is that 50% of the available torque is going to the front axle and 50 to the rear, but 100% of that 50 at the rear is going on either side. So in that context, I was overdriving the outside rear left tire and rotating the back end around, which is helped by the fact that there is that reverse staggered setup. So wider contact patch up front, narrower in the back, it's easier to rotate. It doesn't make this car feel purely rear drive, but it does allow it to feel much more playful than traditional all-wheel drive and especially front drive based all-wheel drive systems. You mix in a really well set up platform and great steering that feels lighter than the M2 CS, but likely just as quick. Not quite as talkative though, but very much engaging. And a healthy bit of power to shove you out of corner exits. And that wonderful 5-cylinder with its odd firing count and great soundtrack. And this car is just so entertaining to drive quickly. Good brakes as well. Whee! And the dual clutch does deliver with prompt shifts, albeit less satisfying shifting action with these smaller paddles that don't have the same amount of travel as the M2 CS. Although, in the same way this is smoother than most dual clutches around town, it's also not as quick shifting as some other ones I've experienced. I think the ZF 8-speed in that M2 CS is quicker to shift, whereas here, if I'm in second gear and I rev it out, if I don't pull the paddle early enough, it is gonna go all the way out and bang off that rev limiter a little bit, so I have to pull it right here to get it to shift right at that 7,000. In the CS, I feel like I can wait that extra fraction of a second. Whee! It's time to tally our scores, but before I reach a verdict, let me go over some specs I did not yet address. Fuel economy in the RS3 is 20 mpg in the city, 29 on the highway, and 23 combined. In the M2 CS, it's 16 mpg city, 23 highway, and 19 combined, although I will say on my road trip, I actually averaged 24.5 miles per gallon. Top speed for the RS3 is 180 miles per hour with the right package, and in the M2 CS, it's 188 miles per hour. Coming back to the price for a sec, I said in the beginning, I'll say it again, I know this isn't perfectly fair. A regular M2 that starts at about $69,000 is a much more direct competitor to the RS3 that starts at about $65,000. This car is tested is $77, give or take, and my car is tested is $111,000. But I'm gonna do my best to siphon out the 30 grand of difference in price based on what you're getting in terms of looks and interior and ride quality and performance. Let's start with styling. The M2, being a two-door coupe with the long hood and the gentle tapering roofline, being longer, wider, and lower than the RS3, even the regular M2, not just the CS, does strike me as a more attractive vehicle. Although I will say, the CS traits do really enhance the look of that car. The regular M2 isn't my favorite design. I still think it's going to get a little more attention than an RS3 just parked one next to the other. Moving inside, I'm going to extract the concept of the all carbon fiber center console of the CS while keeping the prospect of the carbon bucket seats, because you can equip those to a regular M2. Those seats look so much cooler than these. They aren't as comfortable though. We'll get into that in a second. And the tech of the BMW is more cutting edge, it's more responsive, better graphics, so on and so forth, but it's not as driver focused with this defined cockpit here. I do think the sporty touches you can get in a regular M2 are just about, if not a little bit cooler than those in the RS3, and I don't like all of the gloss black and the touch controls for the volume and these controls here on the steering wheel in the Audi. So I'm going to give the nod for the interior to the M2. While now jumping into practicality, which is definitely a win for the RS3. Just having a set of rear doors that you can open makes it so much easier for someone to get inside or get out, and the features you have in the back are much more generous. And just working around town without the long overhang in the M2, the RS3, you're not as nervous going up or down steep driveways or over speed bumps. Driving experience is where this comparison is perhaps most unfair, because the enhancements the M division makes to the CS relative to the regular M2 are, to me, honestly, night and day. I did not like the steering in the regular M2. I love it in the M2 CS, and just the liveliness of the platform is enhanced significantly in the CS model. But the M2 is still rear-wheel drive, and still M has done a lot of great work to make the differential in the platform get the power to the ground as effectively as it does. The RS3, though, is so much fun to drive. I mean, this is about as good as I can imagine an all-wheel drive car being when playfulness and accessible performance is your goal. Audi RS pulled every lever they could to get the joy out of this platform. The way they did the steering, the limited slip differential, the reverse staggered setup so it wants to rotate, the modes they give it, I mean, it wants you to have fun every day. And that earns major brownie points with me. While I acknowledge that the M2 CS is still the better driver's car, not just it being more powerful, faster, higher limits, but the way the car talks to you as you are accessing the performance is to a more granular degree than the RS3. And I believe some of that, certainly not all of it, but some of it is still true of the regular M2. If it was just regular M2 versus RS3, and importantly, if I didn't need the rear doors for bringing kids with me or additional people on a regular basis, I'd still probably choose the regular M2 because it just looks better. It's a little more engaging to drive. You can get it with a manual, even though it's not a good manual, I'll be honest. But if I did need the rear doors, if I didn't have an extra vehicle to manage the practical tasks, then I would feel zero remorse buying an RS3 over an M2. This is such a good car in so many different ways. Which would you guys choose though? Let me know in the comments, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this comparison. I will see you again next time.